Hello and thank you for joining me. I'm so glad you're here today. Before I begin, I'd love to know how far my story is traveling, so please, take a moment to tell me in the comments where you're listening from. It means the world to me to connect with you all. Now settle in. What I'm about to share is a story about the fierce, unbreakable bond between a grandmother and her grandson, and the painful lesson my own son had to learn about what truly matters. This is the story of how my son told me to stop visiting my grandson, and how just 1 week later he came begging me to come back. The silence in my house used to be a comfort. It was the peaceful quiet of a life well lived, a home filled with memories. But for the last 3 days, the silence had become a physical weight, a crushing presence that echoed in every empty room. It was a silence carved out by 4 words from my son Mark. "We need some space, Mom." Those words were the final polite nail in a coffin that his wife Clara had been building for months. And they meant one thing. I was no longer welcome to see my grandson, my 7-year-old Leo, the absolute light of my life. For me, being Leo's grandmother wasn't a casual once-a-month for ice cream roll. I was his person. Leo is a magnificent, wonderfully unique little boy. He was diagnosed with a form of nonverbal autism and a severe sensory processing disorder when he was 3. The world, for Leo, is a chaotic symphony of sights, sounds, and textures, most of which are dialed up to an unbearable volume. He doesn't speak with words, but his eyes, his hands, the very tension in his small body, they tell you everything you need to know if you've learned his language. And I had learned his language. From the moment he was born, I knew he was different. While others saw a fussy baby, I saw a child overwhelmed. While they saw a toddler throwing a tantrum, I saw a little boy terrified by the tag on his shirt or the hum of the refrigerator. I dove into research, I attended his therapy sessions, I learned his triggers, and more importantly, I learned what brought him peace. Our life was a tapestry of carefully woven routines. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would pick him up from his specialized school. Our ritual was always the same. First, we'd sit in the car for 5 minutes in total silence, allowing him to decompress from the school day. Then I'd hand him his weighted blanket, shaped like a friendly dinosaur, which he'd drape over his lap. Only then would I start the car. At my house, everything was calibrated for Leo. The lights were always dimmed. I never wore perfume. I had special seamless clothes for him to change into and a pantry stocked with the only 5 foods he would eat, prepared in the exact same way every single time. Our afternoons were filled with quiet activities, building intricate Lego castles, looking at picture books about deep-sea creatures, or baking my special oatmeal cookies, the only sweet treat he would ever touch because he loved the texture of the dough between his fingers. He would never say my name, but when he would take my hand and press the palm against his cheek, that was his version of, "I love you, Grandma." And it was more than enough. Clara, my daughter-in-law, never understood it. She saw my methods as archaic, my involvement as interference. She's a graphic designer, always online, immersed in the world of modern parenting blogs and influencer moms who promoted a kind of sterile, minimalist approach to child rearing. She believed in exposure therapy, in pushing Leo outside his comfort zone. She saw my quiet, predictable world for him as coddling. The friction started with small things. She'd rearrange the furniture in his room at my house, introducing a new, scratchy rug he couldn't walk on barefoot. She'd pack him a lunch full of organic, gluten-free snacks he wouldn't touch, then get frustrated when he'd come home hungry. "He needs to learn to adapt, Eleanor," she'd say, her voice tight with a forced patience that felt more condescending than kind. My son Mark was caught in the middle. He loved me and he loved his son, but he was exhausted. He worked long hours as an architect, and when he came home he just wanted peace. He deferred to Clara on all things related to parenting, trusting her modern approach over what he probably saw as my old-fashioned fussing. "Mom, Clara's been reading about this new sensory integration technique." He'd start and I knew what was coming. A new, disastrous experiment was about to be performed on my grandson. The breaking point came a week ago. I had arrived at their house on a Thursday afternoon. The air was thick with tension. Leo was hiding under the kitchen table, humming loudly, a clear sign he was deeply distressed. Clara was on her laptop, her jaw clenched, while Mark paced the living room. "What happened?" I asked, my voice low as I knelt and offered my hand to Leo, who immediately clung to it. "Nothing happened," Clara snapped, not looking up from her screen. "We just tried a new routine this morning. I took him to the grocery store. He needs to get used to normal life." The grocery store? I was horrified. The fluorescent lights, the beeping scanners, the crowds. It was Leo's worst nightmare. Clara, you know that's too much for him. We've talked about this. Anya said, small, controlled steps. She finally looked at me, her eyes cold. Victor. Anya isn't his mother. I am. I'm tired of our lives revolving around his limitations. And frankly, Eleanor, I'm tired of you undermining my authority. Every time I try to introduce something new, you swoop in and undo it with your old-fashioned methods. My old-fashioned methods are what keep your son feeling safe. I shot back, my voice rising despite myself. This isn't about your authority, it's about Leo's well-being. Mom, Mark said, stepping between us. His face was tired, his shoulders slumped. That's enough. I looked at my son, pleading with my eyes. Mark, you saw him. He's not okay. You can't just throw him into the deep end and hope he learns to swim. He wouldn't meet my gaze. He looked at his wife, then at the floor. Clara and I have been talking, he said, the words sounding rehearsed. We think it's best if we handle Leo on our own for a while. You're too involved. He's become dependent on you. The words hit me like a physical blow. Too involved? Dependent? I was his safe harbor in a terrifying world. So what are you saying? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Clara stood up, crossing her arms. He's saying we need a break from your visits. We need to establish our own routines as a nuclear family. That's when Mark finally looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and frustration. We need some space, Mom. Just for a while. We'll call you. I stood there frozen. Leo was still clinging to my hand under the table, his lifeline. I gently squeezed his fingers one last time before pulling away. I walked out of that house without another word, the silence of my car a deafening roar. As I drove away, I didn't cry. A strange, cold clarity washed over me. They had no idea what they had just done. They hadn't just asked for space. They had pulled the pin on a grenade and were standing there, smiling, thinking it was a party popper. The first 2 days were a blur of grief. I wandered through my silent house, my hands automatically reaching for the Lego box, my ears straining for the sound of Leo's quiet humming. The kitchen, usually filled with the warm scent of oatmeal cookies, smelled sterile and empty. I called my sister Diana and cried for a solid hour, pouring out the whole story. They're fools, Eleanor, she said, her voice crackling with indignation over the phone. They think reading a blog makes them experts. You just wait. Her words, meant to be comforting, sparked something else in me. It wasn't a desire for revenge, not exactly. It was a grim, steely resolve. They had made their choice. They believed they knew better. Fine. Let them. I would not call. I would not text. I would not beg. I would give them the space they so desperately wanted, and I would let the consequences of their arrogance unfold naturally. On Saturday, day 3 of my exile, my resolve was tested. I was at the local market when I saw Clara's best friend, Jessica. She gave me a hesitant, pitying smile. Eleanor, hi. I heard you're taking a little break from babysitting, she said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. I smiled, a calm, serene expression I didn't know I was capable of. Oh, it's not a break. Mark and Clara are wonderful parents, and they've decided to take a more hands-on role. They have some fantastic new ideas for Leo. I'm so proud of them for taking charge. Jessica's jaw nearly hit the floor. She was clearly expecting a tearful, heartbroken grandmother. What she got was a confident, supportive mother-in-law. I knew my words would get back to Clara, and that was exactly the point. I was not the victim here. I was a loving grandmother respecting her children's wishes. The ball was entirely in their court. That evening, I got my first hint that the carefully constructed world of Mark and Clara was beginning to crack. An email popped up on my tablet. It was a notification from the online portal for Leo's school. It was a message from his teacher, Ms. Albright, addressed to Mark and Clara, but I was still on the distribution list. Subject: checking in on Leo. Dear Mark and Clara, I wanted to reach out as I've noticed a significant change in Leo's behavior the past 2 days. He seems highly agitated and has been unable to participate in our sensory circle time, which he usually loves. He's also refusing his snack and has had 2 major meltdowns, which is very unusual for him. Is everything all right at home? Has there been any change in his routine? Best, Sarah Albright. I read the email 3 times. A cold, sad satisfaction settled in my chest. Has there been any change in his routine? Oh, you have no idea. All bright. They had removed the cornerstone of his routine, and the entire structure was beginning to crumble. Monday, day 5 was when the tremors turned into an earthquake. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was for the city's top pediatric neurology center. My heart leaped into my throat. It was Dr. Anya Sharma, Leo's developmental therapist. Eleanor? It's Anya Sharma. I apologize for calling you directly, but I just had a telehealth session with Leo and frankly I'm deeply concerned. Claire was trying to lead the session and Leo was completely dysregulated. He wouldn't engage with any of the prompts. He was rocking back and forth and hitting his head, something he hasn't done in over a year. I tried to ask Claire what had changed and she became very defensive. She said they were implementing a new independence-focused paradigm. Eleanor, what is going on? I took a deep breath. Mark and Claire asked me to step back for a while, Anya. They feel my presence was making Leo too dependent. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Dr. Sharma spoke again, her voice was dangerously quiet. Eleanor, Leo is not dependent on you. He is bonded with you. You are his regulatory anchor. You've created a system of co-regulation that allows his nervous system to feel safe enough to learn and grow. Taking you away abruptly like this, it's not fostering independence. It's pulling the foundation out from under him. This paradigm of theirs could set him back months, even years. I told them as much, but I don't think they were listening. I know, I said, my voice heavy. But my hands are tied. They have to ask me to come back. Well, for Leo's sake, I hope they ask soon, she said before hanging up. The call left me shaken, but it solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about my hurt feelings anymore. This was about Leo's health and progress. Mark and Clara weren't just being arrogant, they were being reckless. They were treating their son's complex neurological condition like a behavioral quirk they could train out of him with a few blog post techniques. The final crack appeared on Tuesday, day 6. I was in my garden, pruning my roses, when my neighbor from 2 doors down, a sweet woman named Carol, came rushing over. Eleanor. Oh my goodness, are you all right? I just came from the supermarket and I saw the most awful scene. It was your son Mark and Clara. And little Leo, oh that poor child. I put down my shears, my heart beginning to pound. What happened, Carol? Well, they were in the checkout line. And Leo just lost it. He started screaming, a sound like I've never heard. He was trying to climb out of the cart, knocking things over. Clara was trying to hold him down, telling him to use his inside voice, and it was just making it worse. And Mark, he looked like a ghost. He just stood there, completely helpless. They had to abandon their full cart and practically run out of the store. People were staring, Eleanor. It was just awful. I closed my eyes, picturing the scene. The bright lights, the noise, the frustration from Clara, the paralysis from Mark. It was the exact scenario I had helped them avoid for years. They had walked him straight into the fire. I knew the call was coming. They had been stripped of their pride. They had been humbled by their own ignorance. They had failed publicly and spectacularly. Now all that was left was for them to admit it. The call came on Wednesday evening. Day 7. I was sitting in my armchair reading a book when my phone buzzed. The caller ID read Mark. I let it ring 3 times before answering, my voice calm and even. Hello, Mark. Mom. His voice was wrecked. It was thin, frayed, and utterly exhausted. Mom, we need you. I was silent for a moment, letting the weight of those 3 words hang in the air. Oh. Is it my tone neutral? Is everything all right? No, he choked out, and I heard a muffled sob. Nothing is all right. It's Leo. He's not good, Mom. He's not eating. He's not sleeping. He just sits in a corner and rocks. He had a meltdown at the store yesterday. His teacher and Dr. Sharma have called us. We don't know what to do. We've tried everything, all the things Clara read about, and it's all just made it worse. We were wrong, Mom. We were so wrong. The dam of his pride had finally broken, and all the fear and desperation came rushing out. I see, I said quietly. Can you please come over? He begged, his voice cracking. He needs you. I need you. We need you. Here it was. The moment of my vindication. But I felt no triumph, only a deep aching sadness for my son and a fierce, protective urgency for my grandson. But I knew I couldn't just rush over. If I did, this lesson would not stick. The cycle would repeat. Mark, I said, my voice firm but gentle. I am not a light switch you can flip on and off when it's convenient. You and Clara didn't just hurt me. You dismissed years of my care and love, and you put Leo's well-being at risk because you thought you knew better. This can't be fixed with one desperate phone call. I know, Mom. I know. What do you want me to do? I'll do anything, he pleaded. I want you and Clara to come here. To my house. Tomorrow morning at 10, I said. And we are going to have a real conversation. All three of us. If after that conversation I believe you truly understand what you've done, then we can talk about Leo. There was a pause. I could hear him relaying my terms to Clara in the background. I heard her muffled, protesting voice and then Mark's, firm for once. No, Clara. We're doing this. We have to. He came back on the line. Hey, Mom. We'll be there. The next morning I was ready. I didn't bake cookies. The house was clean and quiet, but it was not the welcoming haven I usually prepared for Leo. It was neutral territory. A place for a treaty, not a reunion. They arrived exactly at 10. They looked like survivors of a shipwreck. Mark's eyes were bloodshot and Clara, who was always so perfectly put together, looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Her expensive clothes were wrinkled, her hair was unkempt, and her face was bare of makeup and full of a raw, broken shame. They sat on my sofa, the one where Leo and I had read hundreds of books. They didn't speak. I sat across from them in my armchair. All right, I began, my voice steady. I want to understand. Why did you do it? Mark looked at his hands. It was Clara who spoke, her voice raspy. It was me, she said, finally looking at me. Her eyes were filled with tears. It was all me. I was jealous. I was taken aback. Jealous? Of what? Of you, she whispered. Of your bond with him. You understood him in a way I couldn't. You could calm him down with just a touch. He has a language with you that he doesn't have with me, his own mother. And instead of trying to learn from you, I resented you for it. I thought your methods were a judgment on mine. I thought if I could just get you out of the picture, I could prove that I could do it on my own. That I was enough for him. Her confession was so raw, so honest, that the anger in my heart began to soften. I thought the blogs and the books had all the answers, she continued, tears now streaming down her face. I thought your love was the problem, that it was making him weak. But I was the one who was weak. I was so insecure, so terrified that I was failing as a mother, that I pushed away the one person who was helping him thrive. I almost broke my own son because of my pride. And I am so sorry, Eleanor. I was wrong about everything. I looked at Mark. He nodded, his face etched with pain. She's right, Mom. I let her do it. I was a coward. It was easier to agree with her than to stand up for what I knew was right. I saw Leo was happy and safe with you, but I let her convince me it was dependence. I failed you and I failed my son. I'm sorry, Mom. I let their apologies settle into the quiet room. I took a long, slow breath. Thank you, I said. Thank you for your honesty. That's the first step. But apologies aren't enough. From now on, things have to be different. I am not your employee. I am not your last resort babysitter. I am Leo's grandmother and I am a partner in his care. My knowledge and my experience will be respected. We will operate as a team. We will follow Dr. Sharma's recommendations, all of us. There will be no more secret experiments. We will communicate openly and honestly. Are we clear? They both nodded vigorously, their faces a mask of relief and renewed hope. Yes, Mark said. Anything, Mom. We promise. Good, I said, standing up. Then I'll get my things. Let's go see my grandson. The change in their house was immediate. The moment I walked through the door, I saw Leo, curled up in a ball in the corner of the living room. I walked over slowly, sat on the floor a few feet away, and simply began to hum his favorite lullaby. It took a full minute, but then his head lifted. His wide, beautiful eyes found mine. A flicker of recognition. Of safety. He uncurled himself and crawled over to me, burying his face in my lap. I wrapped my arms around him and he let out a long, shuddering sigh, his little body finally relaxing for what I'm sure was the first time in a week. I looked up at Mark and Clara, who were watching from the doorway, tears in their eyes. I gave them a small, sad smile. The lesson had been brutal, but it had been learned. Our relationship isn't perfect now. There's a scar there, a reminder of that terrible week. But it's better. It's more honest. Clara now watches me with Leo, not with resentment, but with a quiet, humble curiosity. She asks questions. She's learning his language. Mark is more present, more assertive, a true partner to both me and his wife in Leo's care. They learn that family isn't about control or pride. It's about showing up, about admitting when you're wrong, and about putting the needs of a vulnerable little boy above all else. They learned that my love for my grandson wasn't a weakness to be managed. It was his greatest strength. And it's a strength they will never, ever take for granted again. Thank you for listening to my story. It was a painful journey, but one that ultimately brought my family closer in a way I never could have imagined. If my story touched you, I'd be so grateful if you would like the video and subscribe to my channel. I love reading your comments and hearing how my experience resonates with you. There are so many more stories to share. Until next time, take care of one another. With love and respect.